Hi, everybody. Welcome to our summer reading spotlight of Roald Dahl's The BFG. I'm going to be reading the first chapter today for you. My name is Mrs. Derr, and I'm a reading specialist here at NIDIG, and I'm so excited to share this book with you this summer. So get your book, follow along. We're going to start with the very first chapter. While you're getting your book, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the story is about. It says in the beginning here, the BFG is no ordinary bone-crunching giant. He is far too nice and jumpy, and it's lucky for Sophie that he is. Had she been snitched from her bed by a flesh-and-beater, a bone-cruncher, a child-chewer, a gizzard-gulper, or any other giants, she wouldn't have stood a chance, but would have been guzzled like a whiff's whittle before you could say Rack Jobbitson. Whisked off to Giantland, Sophie is shocked and horrified by the BFG's repulsive neighbors. When she hears that they are flush bunking off to England that very night to swallow up a nice English childlers, she decides she must put a stop to them at once. This is a wildly funny, wickedly inventive, golden fizz wizard of a book and will be enjoyed by children of all ages. So buckle up because we're about to start chapter 1 of the BFG, called The Witching Hour. Sophie couldn't sleep. A brilliant moonbeam was slanting through a gap in the curtains. It was shining right on her pillow. The other children in the dormitory had been asleep for hours. Sophie closed her eyes and lay quite still. She tried very hard to doze off. It was no good. The moonbeam was like a silver blade slicing through the room onto her face. The house was absolutely silent. No voices came up from downstairs. There were no footsteps on the floor above either. The window behind the curtain was wide open, but nobody was walking on the pavement outside. No cars went by on the street. Not the tiniest sound could be heard anywhere. Sophie had never known such silence. I'm sure you have your book, but there's a little picture here, a little illustration that you can be looking at. It shows Sophie trying to fall asleep in her bed. Perhaps, she told herself, this is what they called the witching hour. The witching hour, somebody had once whispered to her, was a special moment in the middle of the night when every child and every grown-up was in a deep, deep sleep, and all the dark things came out from hiding and had just the world to themselves. The moonbeam was brighter than ever on Sophie's pillow. She decided to get out of bed and close the gap in her curtains. You got punished if you were caught out of bed after lights out. Even if you said you had to go to the lavatory, that was not accepted as an excuse, and they punished you just the same. But there was no one out now. Sophie was sure of that. She reached out for her glasses that lay on the chair beside her bed. They had steel rims and very thick lenses, and she could hardly see a thing without them. She put them on, then she slipped out of bed and tiptoed over to the window. When she reached the curtains, Sophie hesitated. She longed to duck underneath them and lean out of the window to see what the world looked like now that the witching hour was at hand. She listened again. Everywhere it was deathly still. The longing to look out became so strong she couldn't resist it. Quickly, she ducked under the curtains and leaned out the window. What does that mean, she ducked under the curtains? Can you imagine that? Kind of ducking under something? In the silvery moonlight, the village street she knew so well seemed completely different. The houses looked bent and crooked, like houses in a fairy tale. Everything was pale and ghostly and milky white. Across the road, she could see Mrs. Rance's shop, where you bought buttons and wool and bits of elastic. It didn't look real. There was something dim and misty about that, too. Sophie allowed her eye to travel further and further down the street. Suddenly, she froze. There was something coming up the street on the opposite side. It was something black, something tall and black, something very tall and very black and very thin. I wonder what's coming up the street. I guess we'll have to wait and see with our new mystery reader in a few days. The next chapter is called Who, and we're going to learn more. All right, can't wait to see you soon.